Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery video. Today we're going to be talking about a very strange case, and it's the case of Jason Jolkowski, a 19-year-old man from Omaha, Nebraska, who went missing in 2001. Now this case is particularly strange because there is zero evidence in this. Literally nothing. He kind of just disappeared off the face of the earth. So let me tell you a little bit about Jason. Like I said, he was 19 years old, he lived in Omaha in Nebraska, and he lived with his two parents, Kelly and Jim, and his 13-year-old brother, Michael. Jason was a high school graduate. He worked part-time at a restaurant called Fazoli's, and he was also attending college part-time. It also seems that he had a job as a DJ as well at the local college radio station. Jason loved his family. They were very close-knit, the four of them, and Jason wasn't your typical 19-year-old. He wasn't into alcohol or partying. He just liked to spend his time at home with his family. He was always quite shy and reserved, and that's what reflected in his social life, I suppose. That's not to say he didn't have any friends, he did, he just wasn't the partying type. He was also an avid sports fan. Jason did have a mild learning disability that affected his speech and language, so it often made him appear like he was slightly mentally disabled and slower than the rest of his peers, whereas in reality he was actually above average intelligence. Jason was a Caucasian male. He had brown hair and brown eyes, and something very important to bear in mind in this case is that Jason wasn't a small lad. He was actually quite big. He was 6'1" and weighed about 160 pounds, so he was quite tall. The date that Jason disappeared was the 13th of June 2001. He had been called into work early, and as his car was in the shop for the week, he had to make different arrangements to get to work that day. He was originally planning to walk the entire way, but his manager called him and said that a co-worker was willing to pick him up. And because Jason wasn't great with directions, he just asked the co-worker to pick him up from the local high school, his old high school, just because it was a local landmark that they could both reach easily. So that morning, Jason was leaving to walk to the high school to meet his co-worker about 10:45 a.m. On his way out the door, he noticed that his younger brother was bringing the trash cans into the garage, so decided to help him do that. And that's been corroborated by a neighbour who saw that happen. Just after he helped his brother, he started the 8-block walk to his local high school. Now I'm going to put a map up on the screen now so you can sort of see where Jason's house was in comparison with the high school. It wasn't a very long walk at all. It was obviously one that Jason had done a lot of times before. It was only 8 blocks away, and according to Google Maps it would have taken him about 13 minutes to walk there. However, Jason never made it to the high school, and his disappearance was discovered between about 11:15 a.m. and 11:30 a.m, so quite soon after, when either his manager or his co-worker, I've seen different accounts, called home and spoke to his younger brother Michael, asking where Jason was, and Michael obviously turned around and said, "Oh no, Jason started the walk." And that's when Jason was discovered to be missing. The day of his disappearance, Jason was wearing a white t-shirt. It was either Chicago Cubs or a Sammy Sosa t-shirt. He had on either a blue or black Chicago Cubs baseball hat, and he was wearing black dress trousers and black dress shoes. He would also have been carrying his red work shirt, which he would have put on when he arrived at work. Since the day of his disappearance, Jason has literally obviously disappeared. He hasn't touched his cell phone, he hasn't touched any of the money in his bank account. He had about $160 in his bank account, which has remained untouched. His family estimated that he would have had at most about $60 on him, but they don't even think he would have had that. He wouldn't have carried that much cash around with him. He's never picked up any of his checks from work, and he never picked up his car from the shop either. None of his personal items were missing apart from the things he would have had on him that day, so his cell phone and the clothes he was wearing. I'm not sure if he had a wallet on him, but I'm assuming if his family said he had money on him, he probably had a wallet on him, but none of it's ever been found. He was also due to start a new job the next week, which he was so excited for. Jason's life didn't really have anything going wrong in it at the time. He had a new job, he was doing his college course, he was just a very happy guy. The high school security cameras were checked and they never showed Jason arriving, so it's pretty obvious that he has gone missing somewhere on this walk between leaving his house and before arriving at the high school. His family suspect foul play because there's no other explanation. He wouldn't have run away, he had no reason to. He was a very responsible young man. And like I said, he was never interested in partying or drugs, so it's highly unlikely that that's the cause of it either. Now, as we see a lot in these missing people cases where the person is over 18, the police actually didn't do anything for a number of days, and I read that it took the police 10 days to start to take the investigation seriously. So now we're going to talk about some theories, and this is kind of a tricky one because there's nothing that points to anything. There is no evidence, nothing has ever been found. But what I am going to do is I am going to discard any sort of runaway or suicide theories, just because that is highly unlikely. If it was suicide, a body surely would have been found by now, and also he had no reason to commit suicide, and also he had no reason to run away, so I'm also going to just discard that right now. Not to say that it's completely impossible, because there's always a small chance, but I don't think it is. Before I dive right into the theories, I just want to talk about a perhaps related case that happened a month later. So on July 19th, 2001, a boy called Samuel Sherman was reported as missing. Now, a lot of people think that this is potentially linked to the Jason case because Samuel was the same age. He was a lot shorter, I think he was about 5'6", but in all other ways he was quite similar to Jason. However, this Samuel case has been so difficult to find any information about online. A lot of people are actually speculating that the Samuel Sherman case isn't even a case at all, and it was just something that somebody made up to make a link to Jason. I'm not really sure, but I have seen that speculated online because there's so little information about it. However, for the sake of this video, we are going to say that Samuel Sherman was a real person. I'm inclined to believe he was because he is on the NamUs website, which is the National Missing and Unidentified Person System. So Samuel Sherman was reported as living pretty much on the same street as Jason, just a little bit further down. And this wasn't ever listed as a permanent address for Samuel. It seems that he was a bit of a nomad, he kind of sober hopped. For a 19-year-old boy, that's quite a sad concept anyway, but maybe that's what he just enjoyed doing. So I have a feeling that when he was reported missing, the police didn't really take it seriously because he kind of went missing all the time and sort of just sober hopped from place to place. The police never said there was any link to Jason's case, and Jason's own mother said that she hadn't heard of this case for like years after. I'm inclined to believe that it's not linked. The police probably know what happened in Samuel's case. But again, I think it is interesting to talk about. So I've got a whole load of theories here, and none of them are that in depth or like they're not crazy thought through because there's no evidence to sort of point to anything in particular. But I've just got a few things I want to sort of talk about a little bit. So what I think the biggest possibility here is that somebody has lured Jason into a car and then has hurt him in some way. Now, for somebody to be able to lure Jason into a car, it must have been somebody he knew. And I say this because Jason wouldn't easily have been overpowered by anyone. He wasn't little, he was 6'1", and therefore he probably would have been quite hard to overpower and like force into a car. So there's a possibility that Jason's walking down the street and somebody pulls up next to him and says, "Hey, do you want a lift?" And because Jason knows this person, he willingly gets into their car, not knowing that they don't have the best intention. Now, I don't have anybody to talk about here because there has been nobody who's been like considered a suspect in this case. But it is possible maybe another co-worker, maybe a neighbour or someone like that. Talking of co-workers, the co-worker who was meant to pick Jason up that day was a female, and she was intensely questioned by the police. She was questioned more than anyone else about Jason going missing. And obviously it kind of turned out that she had nothing to do with it. She was just going to be the one who picked him up that day. I have seen some theories online about there being something to do with the restaurant. Maybe this co-worker picked him up and then did something to him, or the manager of the restaurant did something to him. I think that's just a reach, to be honest, because I just think Jason was going to turn up to work that day and he didn't. I don't think there's any foul play in terms of the restaurant being involved. And plus, both the co-worker and the manager were questioned by police so much and nothing ever turned up. Another theory is possible human trafficking. Again, somebody would have had to overpower Jason and kind of bundle him into a car for this to be a theory here. And I feel like human trafficking is always something people like to turn to in these mysterious disappearance cases because it's just kind of the easy answer. And I'm not saying human trafficking doesn't happen, because it does, and it's a massive issue, but I feel like it's always a bit of a cop-out, just go, oh, he was trafficked, because still, how did nobody see him being attacked and bundled into a car? Surely this would have been like, how many years ago? 17 years ago now. So surely Jason would have been spotted in that time by somebody. I don't personally think he was human trafficked, because still there's the whole issue of how did these people get him. Another theory that I quite like the sound of, or not like the sound of, but I think is plausible, is a creepy sex offender neighbour type. Somebody Jason knew, maybe somebody he felt comfortable going to say hi to and speaking to. This sort of, to me, screams like John Wayne Gacy, something along those lines. John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer who sort of preyed on young men. He was never like a paedophile in terms of young boys, but he definitely had an interest in men who were late teens, early 20s, which could explain a sex offender type of situation here. And maybe it was something like that. Maybe Jason walked into a neighbour's house to say hi, or he was like lured into the house and he met his death in the house. For example, John Wayne Gacy would bury boys under the floorboards of his house, and there's a possibility that this happened to Jason, which is why his body has never been found. I do know that police searched the house of one neighbour. I couldn't find out why, I couldn't find out what prompted them to search this particular house. But obviously they never found anything. However, this house wasn't searched until at least 10 days later, when police began to take this investigation seriously, and 10 days is a lot of time to dispose of any evidence here. It's speculated that Jason only made it like a block or two before disappearing, because nobody saw him walking, nobody saw him attacked, and you would think if he had walked like a decent amount of the length to the school, then there would have been witnesses who had seen him walking, but there wasn't anybody, which suggests that he actually didn't get very far at all before he disappeared. Another theory, possible gang activity. There wasn't much gang activity in the area of Omaha that Jason lived in at the time. The gang activity was apparently more focused up in the north of the city, but it doesn't mean to say that there weren't any gangs or any gang members around the area at that time. Maybe it was a case of mistaken identity and Jason was jumped by a group or like a big gang. This is a possibility, could explain what happened, but also doesn't explain why nobody saw it. This would have happened like 11 AM. People would have been out of the house at this time and people would have been in the streets. So surely if Jason had been attacked by a big group of people, somebody would have seen something. There's a possibility he would have been hit by a car. I don't see how he could have been hit by a car and then again there still be no witnesses to it. And I don't see how he would be so unlucky as to be hit by a car and the person who hit him's first reaction is to take the body and hide it. If I hit somebody with my car, my first reaction would be immediately to call the ambulance and help the person, not bundle them into the boot of my car, do you get what I mean? So I suppose it could be likely, but it would just be very, very unlucky for Jason that this person wasn't willing to call the ambulance, if that is what happened. Another possibility here, of course, as is always a possibility, is that it was a serial killer. This would explain how Jason has never been found, because serial killers are usually very precise and they plan out their kills usually. They could have carried out the crime with accuracy, they would have known what they were doing, they would have known how to hide the body. Perhaps Jason was threatened by a gun and that's how he came to enter a car of some kind. I think a serial killer is a possibility, and if it was a serial killer, the serial killer hasn't been found. I don't really know of any prolific serial killers from the Nebraska area. I'm sure there are some, but none that I know of. That is all that I've got for theories. I know they're not very well thought out and well rounded, but there's nothing there to really round them out. It's just no evidence, no body, no nothing. Let me know down below what your thoughts are and what you think happened to Jason. There's never anything positive to come from somebody going missing. However, Jason's mother, Kelly, took it upon herself to try and make the best out of a bad situation. In 2003, she founded Project Jason, which is a charity, a foundation to help the families of people who have gone missing. She helps and supports loved ones, she contacts the media, she prints out missing people's posters. She does everything she can to help reunite people with their loved ones, as she has never been able to do with Jason. And over the years, she has been personally responsible for bringing home multiple missing people. So although there's never anything positive to come from it, she has made the best of a awful situation for herself and her family. Jason's case remains open to this day, so I will leave some numbers and some links down below. If you happen to live in Omaha, Nebraska and happen to know anything about what happened to Jason, then feel free to contact the numbers I'm going to leave below. But of course, don't mess them around, only if you actually know something. I doubt that anybody watching this does, but it's always good to have the numbers there just in case. There's always a hope when somebody's gone missing and a body's never been found that this person has run away and is living a happy life somewhere. which is all you can hope for in Jason's case. However, I do personally believe that he has died, and I think his body is probably buried very close to where he went missing. I don't think he was taken far at all. But of course, let me know what you think about this case. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me. Oh, and another quick thing before we go, I just wanted to get your opinions on this. On Instagram the other day, I put up a poll asking people if they would be interested in seeing videos about serial killers, maybe once a month or once every other month. Instead of a regular midweek mystery video, I'll do like a serial killer spotlight kind of thing. A lot of people on Instagram said they wanted to see it. All my links for social media and stuff are always in the description box, by the way, if you want to go follow me over there. But I'd love to hear what you guys over here on YouTube think. Would you be interested in seeing something about serial killers? Yeah, let me know. Yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye guys.